and we'll give it a few minutes as people log on and tune in. For everyone on the live stream, we're going to give it just a couple minutes. We have people just getting into the log on, so give it a couple more minutes and then we'll get started. Okay, well, good morning. We can get started now. My name is Alex Toner. I'm Assistant Director of Community Engagement in the University of Pittsburgh's Office of Engagement and Community Affairs. And I'd like to welcome you to day 4 of Civic Action Week. I hope you've been able to tune in or attend some of the other events happening throughout the week. Civic Action Week is a campus-wide event for students, faculty, staff, and the broader community to educate, engage, and encourage collective responses to persistent societal challenges at the hyperlocal level in our region, across the nation, and across the world. In the second year, we framed up our sessions and advocacy workshops and service to try to deepen our understanding of the intersections and potential solutions to those challenges through dialogue, deliberation, and disruption. And we have more events today and then a number of things tomorrow, as well as some of our big service projects happening in communities and neighborhoods throughout Pittsburgh and the region. So we hope that you're able to tune in later today, to tune in tomorrow to the live stream on Pitt Student Affairs YouTube page. All our sessions are being recorded and will be able to be viewed on that page, as well as the Engagement and Community Affairs page. We are excited to just have you on board for Civic Action Week, which is presented by my office and the Office of Pitt Serves. And so today, we are joined by friends and representatives from the Pittsburgh Food Policy Council to talk to us about their work and how you might be able to get involved. So with that, I'll hand it over to Sam to get started.
Great, thanks so much, Alex. Yeah, really excited to be here and talk a little bit about our work at the Pittsburgh Food Policy Council, and specifically with the Pittsburgh Food Equity Ambassadors Program. So before we get started, just introduce myself and Olivia, who's with us here today as well. So my name's Sam Applefield. I'm a project manager with the Pittsburgh Food Policy Council. And Olivia, if you want to say hi.
Sure. Hi, I'm Olivia Carter. I am an AmeriCorpsista with the Pittsburgh Food Policy Council and a Pitt alumni as well.
Cool. So I'm going to share my screen here. And yeah, so we can jump right into, like I said, the main thing we're going to be talking about today is the Pittsburgh Food Equity Ambassadors Program, which is a new program we launched this spring. And is still ongoing. Before we get into that, just want to give a little bit of background about the Food Policy Council and our work in general. So I'll start there. At the Food Policy Council, our mission is to build a food system that is just, equitable, and sustainable for all. The Food Policy Council started just over 10 years ago. And really was started by a number of organizations who came together and realized that they were all working on various aspects of kind of food systems related work. So maybe urban agriculture or anti-hunger or doing like nutrition education, kind of all these different things that were related and interconnected, but there was no space for them to come together, to convene, to collaborate, and talk about ways to move their work forward together. So that's kind of how the Food Policy Council got started, as a network, basically, for organizations working on food systems issues. For the first 5 years, it was kind of an all-volunteer network. And since then, the organization has grown, and we have staff, and we're able to take on more projects, but that's still kind of at the core of what we do is try and bring people together and convene and collaborate. So in terms of who is involved, we have a pretty wide network. Over 100 different organizations are members of the Food Policy Council. And in our work, we really try and think kind of holistically and systemically about, the food system. So that means including colleges and universities. We've worked with Pitt as well as CMU and Chatham and other schools, Duquesne in the area, with our local government, with nonprofits, with farmers, with public schools, Pittsburgh public schools, with food business owners, really kind of across anyone who touches food. Basically, we like to have as part of our network, as part of our membership. And I really like this visual just as a way of kind of describing our orientation to the work. So I mentioned this before, that's kind of how the council got started, and that's kind of still at the core of what we do is trying to increase coordination and collaboration. And the theory behind that is, rather than having everyone kind of, in the picture on the left, having everyone in their own little rowboats, kind of rowing and making small ripples by themselves, if we can get a bunch of people into one boat and all be moving in the same direction, we can make a lot more impactful change. We can make a lot bigger, broader change, kind of, moving more directly. So yeah, I just think that this visual kind of illustrates that well. Just a little bit about how the council is structured and what this work actually looks like. We have 3 distinct working groups that have been kind of longstanding at the council. Each group is led by 2 co-chairs and has kind of one staff, Food Policy Council staff support person as well. So we have the Food and Health Equity Working Group, Urban Agriculture, and Regional Food Economy. So within each of those, there are kind of separate projects or sometimes subcommittees who are working on various projects. But these working groups kind of serve as a way for people to come together, share updates, information, support each other. And these working group meetings are they generally happen quarterly. And they're open to anyone. So if anyone is interested in joining, obviously we can share that information later. But yeah, anyone is welcome to sit in on any of the working group meetings. It's a great way to kind of learn about different projects that are happening in the region, and meet people who are involved in in that work. One thing just to share as I kind of wrap up the overview of the Food Policy Council here, for the last, I guess it was 2018 to 2020, basically, the Food Policy Council led this large kind of collective project to develop the Greater Pittsburgh Food Action Plan. So we released the plan just over a year ago. It's like end of September 2020. And the idea is to really have a community-centered approach and plan that outlines, as it says here, regional strategies to prioritize healthy, affordable, sustainable food for all. So really, as we've been doing this work and have all these different working groups who are moving projects forward, there wasn't kind of one place, one document where all those things were coming together. So that was the intention of the Food Action Plan, to kind of put all those things together in one place. There were a lot of different kind of pieces that went into developing this plan. Those are all listed on the screen here. I won't get into too much detail about all of them, but we did some like background research to understand like what the state of the food system, kind of the current conditions of the food system in Allegheny County. That's the geographic scope of the plan. This was pre-COVID that we were doing most of the writing of the plan. So we were able to do in-person community engagement sessions in low-income, low food access neighborhoods throughout Allegheny County, and as well as a survey for people who might not have been able to attend in-person meetings at that time. And a series of stakeholder roundtables as well to hear from, farmers and grocery store owners and compost business operators and people who are kind of who work in the food system day in and day out. So really wanted to make sure we had all those different perspectives and input going into this plan. Just some numbers about the process quickly. Like I mentioned, we had at those stakeholder roundtables, we had over 70 participants, 140 participants at the engagement sessions, 450 survey responses, and then we had just a lot of participation from other folks on our project and advisory team that were kind of guiding the development of this plan. So again, it was really kind of deeply collaborative, a lot of input from a lot of different perspectives informing the plan. Some of the key findings that came out, from this work, just again to share pretty briefly here. There's a lot more information. You can go to, it's just foodactionplan.org. You can go in and see the full plan there and the State of the Food Systems report that I mentioned earlier. But we know there's a decreasing number of farms and acres in farmland are also decreasing in the county. We see that there's like very low, this is statewide, we weren't able to get the information specifically to Allegheny County, but very low percentage of adults meeting daily fruit and vegetable intake recommendations. See that there's a really significant number of people who work in food service and drinking establishments, though wages for those jobs are very low, and obviously COVID has really changed kind of what these numbers look like. And similarly, this was pre-COVID that 13% of, just over 13% of Allegheny County residents are food insecure. Again, those numbers have probably increased pretty dramatically since COVID. So this is just to share again quickly here. This is the plan is organized into these 5 different goals. I won't read through all of them, but that's kind of the overlying structure for the plan. All the different recommendations and strategies that we laid out are organized into these, essentially these 5 different goals here. And this is what the plan looks like. This is just a screenshot. We have recommendations that are kind of broad, and then specific strategies for how to meet them. So for this one recommendation, there are 3 particular strategies, and for each strategy we outline kind of who is involved, what's currently happening, what some next steps might be to move that work forward, and how we would evaluate success on that. There's over 150 or just about 150 strategies, so it's a very robust, comprehensive plan. Like I said, I'd encourage you to check it out if you're interested. With over 150 strategies, we obviously had to prioritize. So we worked with the working groups that I mentioned earlier. We worked with them to identify what our priorities for implementation should be, last fall. And these were the 9 priorities that we established together. Again, I'm not gonna read through all of them here, but the one that we're gonna focus on for the rest of the presentation basically is this first one about supporting community-led efforts to address food apartheid by building resilience, community leadership, and food sovereignty. That is the Food Equity Ambassadors program we see as really a way to address that priority. And so I think with that, I will turn it over to Olivia to talk more about that program.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you for that segue. I think you could switch to the next slide. That's all right. Great. So as Sam said, now we'll start to dig a little bit more deeply into the Pittsburgh Food Equity Ambassadors program that really centers that first priority born out of the gift wrap to support community-led initiatives to try to reduce some in food apartheid communities as well, and to reduce food insecurity in those communities. So I'm just going to do a brief overview of how the Pittsburgh Food Equity Ambassador or PFE program came about. It was launched back, I believe, in 2020 of last year as well via the Healthiest Cities and Counties Challenge, but we really didn't start digging into the resident portion of the program into this year of 2021 in the spring. But the Healthiest Cities and Counties Challenge itself was a grant and opportunity led by the American Public Health Association, the Aetna Foundation, and the National Association of Counties and Healthy Places by Design to advance community health equity across the country. And we were fortunate enough to be chosen as one of the cities, Pittsburgh City, being involved in this challenge itself. So the funding that has been received through the grant is used to support 2 goals, and the second goal, the Pittsburgh Food Equity Ambassadors program, allowed us to create a resident cohort program. So we've used part of the funding to fund the first cohort, which started in the spring of this year, and we'll be using the second portion of the funding to fund a second cohort next year, which I'll dive into a little bit more later. So also born out of this challenge, it's not just Pittsburgh Food Policy Council, although we are the project leads on it. We developed the Pittsburgh Food Team based on partners throughout the city of Pittsburgh. So those include a little bit of a broader approach with the Allegheny County Health Department at the county level, the city of Pittsburgh itself, community organization One Pennsylvania, as well as the American Heart Association of Greater Pittsburgh. You can go to the next slide. So now with that background, we're just going to dive into what the Pittsburgh Food Equity Ambassador Program's intents and some of their goals and outcomes is. So as Sam was saying, similar to, I feel like, to how Give Back was a community-centered approach that prioritized healthy, affordable, sustainable food for all, PFEA is really truly meant to center residents' voices within some of these policymaking processes and some of the processes that actually inform the decisions that we have in the city to increase healthy, affordable, sustainable food for all. So the intent then was to create a consistent mechanism to meaningfully engage residents with local government to co-design policy again that positively impacts food and health equity in priority communities. In those priority communities themselves, we worked with the city of Pittsburgh because they have identified healthy food priority areas. They have a Great Feed Pittsburgh report that was also released last year too, in the October of 2020, that highlights exactly what healthy food priority areas are. And those are spaces in the city of Pittsburgh that have food apartheid, essentially, that are food apartheid areas, meaning that there is very low access food availability, and it's very difficult. You essentially have to leave these neighborhoods to get your food. And it's not a happenstance. They decided to shift the narrative from food deserts to food apartheid just because it actually highlights the fact that there are systematic policies and structural racisms that have led these neighborhoods to the lack of food. But how can we fix this? So we're hoping through the Food Equity Ambassadors Program, we can start to again engage residents to have these conversations and to start to hopefully recommend and implement some policy change by empowering residents with this information to make these decisions themselves as well. So the program goals, I've already pretty much read the first one, but again, centering the voices of those most impacted by food insecurity, increasing opportunities to share experience amongst themselves as well, raise awareness to other food systems challenges, and understand food systems challenges and the policymaking process itself. And we do that by bringing in some panelists that Sam will talk about a little bit later when we actually start to dig into what some of the sessions have looked like thus far. And then also we've really wanted to advocate for building leadership capacity of residents themselves to support their own advocacy in the work that they're doing, because many of the residents who are involved in the program are new to the food systems. They're already doing a lot of the work just on the ground level as well. But so not only supporting their advocacy, but also supporting advocacy of food systems challenges and issues beyond the program. So through going through this program, we hope that some of the outcomes would be again, a mechanism for ensuring that the city food policy development process is more inclusive than it has been in the past and more responsive of the needs of its residents as that's constantly shifting. Residents are able to see and feel the direct impact of their contributions. They will have a greater understanding and engagement in the local policymaking process through interactions with public officials and peer organizations. And then they'll hopefully then reaching back to one of our first priorities then is the local food system is more equitable, culturally competent, and better meets the needs of its residents. So now just to kind of dive a little bit into the program overview itself. So we had started with 14 residents. This was chosen, I'll start with the application process side a little bit more than the left-hand side, but so we have 14 ambassadors. That is due to the fact that we have 9 city council districts. So we've chosen ambassadors from each city council district to kind of have a very much more inclusive way of selecting ambassadors, so we have more representation across the city. And also working with the city of Pittsburgh, we asked folks for their addresses so we could determine if they actually lived in a healthy food priority area, because we wanted to also prioritize those who lived in those areas of most need. And we also, again, prioritize folks who were Black, Indigenous, or people of color, and those with lived experience of food insecurity by asking some of the questions on the applications to determine those needs. So the timeline itself, again, it started back in spring, I believe, June of 2021. We have planned for 9 2-hour-long sessions, 3 weeks in part in between. So we'll be wrapping up, I think from May to November, might have been late May then. And then we are also, so part of the funding that I was talking about before for the program itself is going to a compensation model for those who are involved. It's a total of $585 for participating in all 9 sessions, which means it's about $65 per session if you aren't able to make one of the sessions, although we do highly encourage everyone to join in each session itself. But we chose the compensation model, just recognizing that they're, again, already doing the work and that they are experts in their knowledge, their field, their expertise, and they need to be recognized and compensated for the work that they're doing with us, taking time out of their schedules. And unfortunately, maybe if it was more, it's all virtual at the moment, but if it was in person, we would have also been able to provide childcare assistance if needed, or even food itself. As a food policy council as well, just to like actually have food at the table while we're doing some of this work. But as it's virtual, we're just shifting to more of a payment method for now. And ambassadors are paid in the middle of the session or middle of the program itself, and then at the end of the program. And I will now pass it back to Sam to talk a little bit more about what we've accomplished to date.
Great, thank you, Olivia. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about what the sessions themselves have looked like so far and what we've, some of our reflections on the program to date. So the first couple of sessions were really about kind of trying to bring this group of people together. So, you know, establishing some community agreements and figuring out how we want to be working together, and really focusing on kind of trying to build relationships among ambassadors and yeah, just throughout the group. I think that's kind of an important part of the program is just, you know, as Olivia mentioned, a lot of the ambassadors are folks who are doing really great work in their communities already. So just, you know, creating this kind of support network, I think has been a good outcome so far. But in our, yeah, also in the first couple of sessions, we worked towards kind of getting some shared definitions of food systems. It's a term that gets thrown around a lot, and also food equity, right? That's the food Pittsburgh Food Equity Ambassadors Program. So we want to have some shared understanding of what we're actually talking about there. So these are, we use, you know, try and, as Olivia mentioned, it's all virtual. We try and use some kind of interactive tools to make it a little more interesting. So this was notes from our Jam board talking about what does a food system mean to you. So you can see on the right-hand side, there's some, you know, folks name some like different parts of the food system in terms of, you know, being able to see the connections between production and processing and distribution and consumption, and also had just, you know, some definitions and of what yeah, people thought food systems included. Yeah, so it's some good conversation to, you know, we weren't working towards like writing a specific definition that the group was going to use going forward, but it's helpful to kind of talk through some of these terms together. And this is similarly for what does food equity mean to you? Yeah, these are the notes from that conversation as well. We see themes of having access, see themes of justice and rights, right? Like human rights to food. So yeah, some good kind of early conversations about what it is that we're working on trying to do together as a group. So from there, kind of, you know, establishing that a little bit of that base, we then worked on kind of brainstorming what are the issues that we want to focus on, what are some of the more particular challenges, and it seemed like through some sessions, through some kind of conversation, there was the greatest interest really in talking about food access, and talking about food availability, and transportation. So then we, you know, kind of tried to facilitate some more in-depth discussion on those topics, getting kind of to the root of, okay, when we're talking about transportation, like what actually do we mean here? And, you know, there's like getting people to either grocery stores or food pantries or wherever they're accessing their food. There's then, you know, the getting the food back home, you know, like carrying groceries on a bus, for example, is difficult. So like what are, getting into that level of kind of detail about what some of the challenges folks are experiencing in their communities. And yeah, and so then, you know, given again the interest there, we brought in a panel discussion, just our last session, to share kind of some of the experience from folks who are working on these issues, who are already working on some of the potential solutions that people might be thinking about, or that we were talking about in the group. So the panel, we had folks from 412 Food Rescue, the Green Grocer, which is a mobile market from the Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank, Fish and Loaves Cooperative Ministry, which is in Hazelwood and had started a cooperative buying club in the neighborhood, and also from the Central Brooklyn Food Co-op, as there had been talk about, within our previous sessions about organized kind of communities organizing for their own cooperative grocery stores, and they're at the Central Brooklyn Food Co-op in the process of doing that. So it was a really great kind of discussion, talking about kind of the opportunities, the benefits of these individual programs, and kind of some of the trade-offs as well, some of the shortcomings of these various approaches. So it's been a lot of really good conversation with the group, kind of diving into the nitty-gritty of these issues. And so where we are now, we're actually getting ready to have our seventh session. 7th out of 9 is tomorrow. We were hoping some ambassadors might be able to join this session and share a little bit more about their experience in the program, but our session is tomorrow morning, so I think the scheduling was just difficult to have 2 days in a row. But we are currently working, based on kind of all of our previous conversations. We have essentially a draft set of recommendations that we're going to be refining over the next 2 sessions or so, next 2 or 3 sessions. And our intention is to present that to the new mayoral administration. So, there's going to be an election in November, in about a month, and we know that there will be a new mayor. So, thinking it's a really good opportunity to take the work that this group has done and present it to the new mayor, and hope we can get some support for it in that way. We were also thinking we'll share this set of recommendations with some city council members as well to try and get support there. So that's kind of what our next couple of sessions and kind of goal for the rest of the program are looking like. I'd say that just in kind of reflecting on the program so far, some of the just want to share some quick thoughts and reflections. One thing that for us at the Food Policy Council and our partners at the city, it's been challenging to kind of find the right balance of how much structure to provide in the program. I think initially we had really wanted to leave it pretty open-ended so that the interests so we could build the program basically around the interests of the ambassadors. But we've been learning that we need to provide some more structure and guidance to kind of allow that to happen well. So that's something we're kind of, after each session, evaluating and readjusting and trying to figure out. And so that's, as Olivia mentioned, this is kind of the pilot cohort. We know we have, we'll be doing another cohort coming up next spring, and hoping to be able to do more after that. So that's something we'll probably be revisiting, just kind of what, if we might put a little more structure into the program. And a little more kind of more direct kind of a kind of curriculum, and have be more kind of educational based, but things we're currently still kind of reflecting on and trying to figure that out. Some other thoughts in terms of the length and the pacing. As Olivia mentioned, the sessions are 3 weeks apart. It's been good. It's given us plenty of time to plan for each session, but it's a little kind of long. It's hard to kind of build momentum over that long a period of time. So that's something we're thinking about. What would it look like if it were 2 weeks in between? And also we had 9 sessions And it was really quick in that sense. So that's something, we might try and add a few more sessions into future cohorts to so we can cover a little bit more ground. Obviously, with this cohort, we had the opportunity, the mayoral transition kind of presented an opportunity to develop recommendations to kind of to present to the new mayor. And with a future cohort, given the different timing, we would need a different end product essentially. So don't know exactly what that would look like. It would probably depend on kind of how much, what the reception of these recommendations is by city council and by the new mayor. But that's also something that, that will look different in the next iteration. So yeah, as I mentioned, that will probably be happening in the spring of next year, of 2022. So I think I'm going to throw it back to Olivia here to talk a little bit more about about the next cohort and other ways to kind of get involved with the Food Policy Council and our work.
Thank you, Sam. So we were talking about a little bit before, so we do plan to have a second cohort definitely for next year in the spring. So look out for applications in the winter of 2022. So that should be going out in about probably January or February. And again, I can read out quickly the qualifications to apply. They will most likely be the same as this year's as well. So we essentially just ask you to be a City of Pittsburgh resident, 16 years or older. So that includes college students as well. We understand and recognize, and even for me, having dealt with college food insecurity, it's real. And we do have 2 ambassadors who are college students at the moment as well. And then we just ask that folks have a strong sense of community and interest in food and in food policy. We don't ask you to be an expert in food policy. That's what we're here for, and as Sam was saying, to provide some of that guidance so we can help share some of that knowledge that we have with you all. And then also willing to participate in actually creating some of these policy solutions alongside local government. That's with alongside our local partners with the City of Pittsburgh and Allegheny County Health Department. And then willing to work with a diverse group and contribute to the program through active participation and feedback. And we understand that with virtual right now, it's been a little bit tricky, I think, just to kind of find some of those more like engaging aspects, but just like we do have the jam boards and we try to go into like breakout rooms and have some robust discussion and conversation. And then we just ask that folks are able to attend all meetings, and again, with some flexibility for last minute emergencies as well. But if you're also not sure if you want to apply for the program, understand that as well. But if you do want to get connected with some more food justice work in the region, feel free to check out our website. I have it posted right there, pittsburghfoodpolicy.org. Again, as Sam was saying at the beginning of the presentation, you can check out when some of the working group meetings are on the calendar of events section. Read a little bit more about the working groups as well if you're maybe interested in attending some of those. And we do also have a member meeting coming up. Everyone's welcome to be a member of the Pittsburgh Food Policy Council and join in. That will be 2 weeks from now, Tuesday, October 26th from 4 to 5:30. And I do have a tiny URL too, just for PFGC member meeting if you want to register and check it out. I think it's a great way still of networking with folks in the region, just about around food and food policy. Even for me as a Vista, I've just met some people that I've worked with in the past or even have seen like in college too, which is a lot of fun, just to kind of like connect again, centered around food itself and food justice work in the city of Pittsburgh. We also have a newsletter as well that you can sign up for on the website. That was it on my end. I don't know if you'd like to add anything, Sam.
No, yeah, I think that's all for us. I don't know if anyone has any questions, but we would certainly be happy to answer.
If anyone does have questions, please drop them in the chat on the live stream, which I will pull up now. And we'll leave some time for folks to drop those in. One question while folks are getting their thoughts together that I had is, do you have a local example of food system at the hyper-local level in a Pittsburgh neighborhood or community, or how maybe you could sort of practically define that or visualize that based on a neighborhood that you're doing work in now, just to give a little more tangible sort of taste of that? No pun intended.
Yeah, there's lots of intentional and accidental puns working in food here. Yeah, it's a good question. Thanks, Alex. So I'm trying to can think of a couple examples. I'll give a few that are like citywide to start, and then some kind of more neighborhood specific ones as well. So one thing, an issue the Food Policy Council worked on a few years ago was the urban ag zoning code within the city of Pittsburgh. So these are things that affect, like, if you want to have chickens or bees in your backyard, for example, like what are the regulations that the city has that allows that? Yeah, and also, just kind of general gardening, green space kind of thing. So that was something that, like I said, the council worked with the city and a number of other partners to develop, to update the zoning code, and the code that we currently have is kind of held up and seen as a model kind of around the country for what like really progressive urban ag zoning can look like. I know a lot of other cities have struggled. We get questions from other cities, other food policy councils often of like, we're trying to work on this like zoning issue, or I don't know why the chicken thing comes up a lot. People like really want to have backyard chickens, and like there are really restrictive city ordinances. So that's that's like one example of what local level policy can look like. Another kind of citywide example, something we're kind of just starting to actively work on a bit now, is there's a program called Food Bucks, which provides for anyone for SNAP recipients, if you spend $5 on produce at a few kind of participating grocery stores or at farmers markets, you get a coupon basically for $2. So it's encouraging the use of it's an incentive program for buying produce, and it gives people more money basically to buy that. So that's something we're trying to see if we can get support at the city or county or even the state level actually to provide more funding for that program to be able to expand it further. In terms of like neighborhood specific examples, as you had asked in the question, the kind of thing that comes up most, I would say, is about basically grocery stores. And so there's a lot of conversation now in the Hill District. There's the Shop and Save that closed, and now there's kind of a whole community process where there are, I believe it's the URA, the Urban Redevelopment Authority, that owns that building, and there were four essentially applicants who put in applications to open businesses there. So they're engaging the community in trying to get a sense of what they would like to see. We haven't been super involved in that process, but have been kind of, as there have been community meetings and events, just kind of helping to spread the word about that, so that there can be real community input and engagement into what kind of food retail sites they'd like to see in their neighborhood. And we see like some of that playing out in Hazelwood. There's conversation right now as well about developing a grocery store. And in Homewood, there's been a group that's been working on developing a cooperative grocery store there for a little bit as well. So those are kind of the first examples that come to mind. I don't know, Olivia, if you have any other examples or thoughts you would add.
I'm not sure if maybe I understood the question correctly. I was thinking of more like So food systems at like the hyper local level, that made me immediately think of so Scratch, and I believe it's Mount Washington or Mount Oliver, somewhere down south of the city. But they're working on a peach salsa called the Good Neighbor Project, and they're actually worked with. It just made me think of at least like the story of like the food system and stuff like on the local level. But they received the actual recipe from one of the neighbors using some of the products that they had sold at their store, and they're like, wow, we could actually like start to build this out more. And they're working with a lot of different like, organizations in their community and in their neighborhood to launch this product. And they had wanted to ask us to be involved so that they could start to use some of the proceeds to donate to the Food Policy Council. And we've been talking about how it's kind of like similar to like that work of like the finalized like get back, like it will be produced locally with local farmed goods. Probably same for like peaches, just depending on like when you're making it and how you can actually get peaches and when. But I don't know, that was kind of one of the thoughts that I had at least. But that's still like kind of in the works of like what that will look like and exactly like where they're going for like marketing and where exactly production will take place. But it's planned to take place like in, if not like the neighborhood in Pittsburgh. So that's what it made me think of like a local food system example.
That's terrific. And that's the restaurant Scratch, right, Olivia? Yeah. So they're in Troy Hill, I believe. Yeah. So those are fantastic examples. And one of the things that we hope people walk away from Civic Action Week is just a sort of a sense of action and a sense of ways that they can get involved in some of the issues like food justice that we're talking about this morning. And so you laid out some resources, which I think are really helpful. One other question that I have, I think is, can you talk a little bit about how you've seen the food ambassadors from the first two cohorts really center resident and community voice in some of the recommendations that they're bringing to the table that you might not have otherwise been able to garner in a direct way like this, if you hadn't had recruited from those communities and neighborhoods that face some of the biggest food insecurity challenges in Pittsburgh. So how have the ambassadors brought community voice to this process in a way that might otherwise have been a little harder to do?
Do you want to start, Olivia? I'm happy to jump in again, but to see if you want to start.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I don't think it's actually something that I've thought about just yet. But in thinking about this, I know it's, so with like Get Fact, there were, or the Greater Pittsburgh Food Action Plan, there was community engagement in those processes as well. But I think what, at least like for me, I see different from, maybe not necessarily Get Fact itself, but like from other ways that community engagement has been done in the city thus far, like in food apartheid neighborhoods or food insecure neighborhoods, is that it's not necessarily a focus group with the Pittsburgh Food Equity Ambassadors where we're just like sitting down and then just listening or just like kind of talking without actually having any processes in place where, okay, so now we want a pathway for whether it's not the implementation of the policy making process, but like how can we start this process of like actually putting these policies in place or to have recommendations with city council and with the next mayoral administration. So I think it's kind of forging these relationships and connections that might not have been in place before. And I do understand with like the city council that they do work in their own districts themselves, but I think it's kind of more similar to like the hyperlocal, like with just engaging with one ambassador who is involved in their community and within their own relationships too, that they can see like some of the things that have changed, like post-COVID world. You can still say COVID's ongoing, but I think at least attending some city council meetings that they say that they're still like engaging with that heard their constituents, but I do think that like those who are actually living it, like and seeing this day-to-day change would kind of bring that voice to the center of these conversations themselves. And I think from like seeing, for me at least, I think there's like aspects where there's things that like I wouldn't say like heard of, but like or hadn't thought of like in the systems. I think through the like transportation, for me, I really enjoyed that conversation a lot because just like understanding, I think some of the like things that ambassadors brought up was like, well, what if we had more of like even a community operated like jitney service, or because realistically, like we are using jitneys as well, and that's a way to actually get food, but they're charging lots of money to like call like 50 pounds of food just like from the grocery store, and then you're just like it's increasing your expenses for like actually obtaining food. But like what if it was a property, drivers were actually getting paid livable wages, had benefits. So I think some of like the actual recommendations, whether or not like and ways that which will include them will probably change, but or just like the ways that we word them might change a little bit. But just like some of these like more in-depth recommendations or things that, like I hadn't thought of or like have seen before. So I think that's what I've noticed so far. I don't know how you want to add, or what do you like to add, Sam?
Yeah, I think just quickly to build off that a little bit, that a lot of like the bigger picture challenges, right? Like food affordability and access to food, like where we are aware of those challenges, those problems, but getting the kind of the on the ground perspective and the experience from ambassadors, as Olivia was saying, is kind of I think been really informative in our work, and really helps to kind of like kind of come up with some different potential solutions, and yeah, just to help like frame the issues in a different way. And I also think that just having, kind of remains to be seen a little bit, but having one of the main goals is kind of to empower the ambassadors to drive the creating the change on these issues. And so putting them in a position to talk to city council, to talk to the mayor, to bring up these issues, not as like paid staff of nonprofit organizations who are working on this. Again, remains to be seen, but I feel pretty optimistic about the impact that will have. So I think that's all I kind of add to Olivia's answer there.
Those are both great reflections. I appreciate that. And I don't see any other questions from our audience today. So I think that brings us to the conclusion of the program. Sam, I think your final words there were very poignant, though, in terms of encouraging folks to get involved in the ways that they can. So whether it's applying to be a food ambassador on third cohort when the application opens, or getting involved in some of the food justice resources that Olivia shared on the website, attending food policy council meetings, or just thinking about the ways that you can be an advocate for this in the neighborhood that you live in, the community that you live in, and really speaking the change that you wish to see be affected in your neighborhood and in the city of Pittsburgh and around the world. We know that the pandemic has exposed or re-exposed the critical issues facing basic needs, of which food insecurity is one of them. And so we all have a role to play in making sure that we address the challenges in a positive way moving forward. So on behalf of everyone tuning into the live stream, I just want to thank Olivia and Sam for spending some time with us this morning, telling us a little bit more about their work, ways to get involved, and what to look out for as the Food Ambassador program grows in the city of Pittsburgh. So thank you both. Thanks to everyone for tuning in and joining us for this session during Civic Action Week. We'll end the live stream now, but please do look for more opportunities this week as Civic Action Week continues, and check out the recordings on the Pitt Student Affairs YouTube and the Engagement and Community Affairs YouTube as well. Everyone have a great day, and thanks for joining us.